Okay. Greetings, everybody. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. And we're coming at you again tonight with contract clauses. United States Postal Service. And you'll notice the little R with the circle around it. That's the registered agent. For the post office, who holds a little T with the circle around it, meaning they are the trademark holder of the copyright material of the post office and its Universal Postal Union, which would include things like the Law of Nations, the Treaty of Berne, Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, that all of the 194 participating nations, countries, states, whatever you want to call them, have adopted and amended for their use according to their nation's laws for administration. We're going to talk about that tonight through contract clauses. And before we get started, I want everybody to hit that share, like, and subscribe button down below. There's a PayPal link sitting there for everybody to share some love. Every little bit counts, 10, 15, 20 bucks. It all works. And like I said, it's just kindness of your heart to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is down there for you in case you want to hop on the stream. And I want to say welcome to everybody first. Travis Turner and whoever else is watching. I don't know. It tells me I've got more than just the one, but it's not telling me what platforms they're on. So anybody watching from Facebook, my profile or my HOTEP Second Week group, welcome. If you want to come join us live, go to the El Perro channel or the Hecklebus channel on YouTube, and the links are there. Otherwise, let's get into it with contract clauses. And as I want to point out, everybody, if you see my cursor up here, this is a USPostalService.com manuals. This is in their manuals, and you'll notice it says United States Postal Service, and there's that little registered trademark or registered mark. Now, if you look up Form 63 or 6837, you'll find it's a rural money money order, rural postal money order. And you'll see on there they've got both the United States Postal Service with this little registered mark and then the post office with its little trademark. So again, confirming the place that they hold in that trust. And here on their site, we have contract clauses. And like I said, that Universal Postal Union, that's a labor union. And they're the ones that control all contracts around the world. Okay. That's the law of nations, the law of the flag, presentment of offer and acceptance. And that's the first sign of a merchant is the flag. And you'll be able to tell where they hail from by the flag because they're participating in this United Nations. Now, if it's got any other flag, you got to seriously question it. Okay. So the next one, it's the same document. There's a link to this in the details down below. But we're going to go down to 8.1 in those contract clauses. And it talks about Clause 8.1, patent rights. Okay, that's the patent, which is just patent means observable. Patent or latent. Latent means underlying. Patent means overlying. In other words, it's on top. It's on the surface. It can be seen. Where if it's latent, it's underneath, and it might be hidden. You can uncover it or discover it, but it's latent. Same thing. Patent rights, patent rights. They're observable rights. You cannot miss them. Okay. Definitions used in this clause. Notice it's capitalized, this clause. Subject invention. Subject invention. As I explained in the last video I did earlier tonight, they have a territorial jurisdiction for maritime use, special, and the subject is maintained within those territorial jurisdictions. Those territorial jurisdictions are the different states of the Union. Any invention or discovery, whether or not patentable. So if you create something, you're an inventor and you patent it, you're making it observable. That's what patent means. So if you get a patent license, you're asking to make it observable to the world. Do you need to do that? No. If you've got an invention, just show them. Show them proof of concept that you conceived of first and reduced to practice in the course of or under this contract. You don't have to patent anything under this contract. Okay? If it's patent, it's already observable. Think about that. The term includes, but is not limited to, any art, method, process, machine, manufacture, fact. The action of you placing the facts on it, man. Design, sign. You design it and then they want you to sign for it. They want your signature. Or composition of matter. What is it composed of? How about constitution? That's something they don't have in here. How about the constitution of the matter? What constitutes it? Or any new variety of plant, or excuse me, any new variety, any new and useful improvement thereof, or any variety of plant that is or may be patentable under the patent laws of the United States of America, Inc., or any foreign country, or any foreign country. So if you're not part of the UN, are you a foreign country? Do you have the same rights, patently observable, as a foreign country? What are those rights? Are those rights the ability to produce any art, method, process, machine? Is it the right to invent? Invent, comment, fabrication, invention, or fiction. Isn't manufacture a way of fabricating something? So if you fabricate something, does it become real? Does it become true, or does it remain fiction? See, you guys are caught up in this language of babble, and I really don't think you know what it stands for. So, Postal Service purposes, the right of the Postal Service to practice. So, postage and posting, as in postal things, as in your ability to post, even though you're not providing it as a service, but still doing postal things by posting things in places where you post and you do it repetitively and get better and better at it. You are practicing the same way and have practiced, make or have made, use or have used, sell or have sold any subject invention. Comments, is that an invention of your own mind? Did you use it, or was it used? Was it used against you even? Throughout the world by or on behalf of the United States Postal Service. U.S. Postal Service. On behalf of. United States. What if you pronounced that differently? What if you separated that and took its root word and pronounced it by its root word, united? Every contract is a unit. It's a unit. Contract, any contract, agreement, or other agreement or subcontract entered into with or for the benefit of the Postal Service. That's the term of a contract. Remember, it's the Postal Regulatory Commission and the United States Postal Service. That is the federal government, which includes all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service as the registered agent, and the Postal Regulatory Commission as a commission of the post office as the trademark holder. That's the original contract, and it's a labor contract. Subcontract and subcontractor. Any subcontract or subcontractor of the supplier. Any contract, agreement, or other agreement or subcontract entered into with or for the benefit. So you provided something with or for the benefit of the post office or postal service. Any subcontractor or subcontractor of the supplier under this contract in any lower tier subcontract or subcontractor under this contractor. You use that address, that's a implied contract of use or made use. Use or have used. You used it, you big dummy corporations, to bring the invention to the point of practical application. Remember, it depends upon who practiced, who can apply it. Okay, they practice their stamps. I can practice my stamps. Like I said, homemade stamps. Everybody catching this? Moon Peach, Travis Turner, Sunshine Time, JLV, Citizen Science Oral Health Project, Ramon Marquez, Jeff Pizer, Dre Vasco. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Hit that share, like, and subscribe button, folks. There's a PayPal link pinned to the top if you can share some love. There's a StreamYard link up there in the chat if you want to jump on panel. And let's remember that we've got to learn. These are just simple contract terms and conditions. It's plain language. And again, I like I said many times, if it's confusing you, I think you should stop, unlearn everything, and relearn it. Concise English Handbook, College Composition Handbook, and the 1611 edition of the King James Version of the Scriptures. Oh, Sunshine says she's been in class with Derek. Sunshine, if you're listening, tell him to send me the damn link. I've been trying to get a hold of him. He was supposed to send it to me. He never did. Otherwise, that's where I'd be instead of doing this. So let's get back to it. Practical application. If you're going to keep applying for those jobs and filling out those applications and applying for medical insurance and filling out those applications, you're the one practicing. Are you going to get better at it? Are you going to get good enough that you can start making your own things? Rights granted to the Postal Service. Okay, who granted them? Like I said, the post office. They are the trademark holder. So they assign the Postal Service, United States Postal Service, as the registered agent to convey their instrumentalities. The supplier agrees to grant. So now we know the supplier is the one that granted the rights to the Postal Service, and that's what they supplied, was the rights. Okay. The supplier agrees to grant. So the one that granted the rights is the grantee, and they granted the rights to the Postal Service, and that means they are the supplier, and that they supplied the Postal Service with rights. The Postal Service title, rights in the title. So the post office is the title holder, and they granted rights in that title and to each subject invention, and that's the subject matter, is the comments, the fabrications, inventions, and fictions. Nothing contained in Clause 8-1 patent rights grants any rights with respect to any invention other than a subject invention. Therefore, it must be the subject matter of the post office, thereby being the copyright material of the Universal Postal Union. Quit adding your private data elements to their shit. Subject, invention, disclosure, and reports. And again, this link is down below. Subcontracts. The supplier must, unless otherwise authorized or directed by the contracting officer, include a patent rights clause containing all the provisions of Clause 8.1 patent rights, which is what they're doing here. They're providing all these patent clauses, giving the patent rights, except paragraph G below, in any subcontract where the purpose of the subcontract is to conduct experimental, developmental, research, or engineering work. Practical application. It's all in development. They're renewing the engineer. They're researching the old stuff and finding out what's better. What was made or is made and used or has been used. And it's all a research, every last bit of it. Even the language before you, like we saw, it's English now is not what you think it is. It's not just English. English is a mix of multiple language, and therefore it itself is the colored language. And you'll notice all the courts around the world are trying to convince everybody that's the language for all the courts, no matter what country you're in, even Israel. If a subcontractor refuses to accept this clause, the supplier must promptly submit a written report to the contracting officer setting forth the subcontractor's reasons for the refusal and any other pertinent information that may expedite disposition of the matter. Disposition of the matter, not of the man. You see the differences? May not proceed with the subcontract without the written authorization of the contracting officer. So if you're the one contracting, then they can't go without your permission. Again, telling you, you have that unlimited power of contract. The supplier may not, in any subcontract or by using some subcontract as consideration thereof, acquire any rights to subject inventions for its own use. They can't make a practical application of it by just taking it or convincing you that you have to be a patent license holder in order to use it or sell it to yourself or make more of them. They can't do that. The supplier may not, in any subcontract or by using subcontract as consideration thereof, acquire any rights to subject inventions for its own use. And if it's not a subject invention, then they can't acquire it at all. It must first be a subject invention. You must first apply it under their patent application. as distinguished from rights required to fulfill its contract obligations to the Postal Service in the performance of this contract. So again, asserting that the only rights that they give anybody is to the Postal Service, and it's because they hold the patent to the Post Office Labor Union and its services, which is all contract forms. So they lay out the terms and conditions for those contract forms, and this is it. Reports, instruments, musical instruments. Did they say musical instruments? Vehicular instruments? Financial instruments? What's a financial vehicle? Have you looked that one up? Does that sound like a financial instrument? And other information required to be furnished by a subcontractor to the contracting officer under a patent rights clause in a subcontract may, upon mutual consent of the supplier and the subcontractor, not the contracting officer that holds the patent rights, but the other two parties. See, now there's three parties. And the subcontractor now has to agree with the original grantee, the one that supplied the Postal Service with its patent rights. So now that subcontract or that contractor with the patent rights loses his patent rights. You see how that works? Now it's going to the subcontractor because the contractor contracted out to the subcontractor. And that subcontractor has unlimited rights to contract with the contractor who just got you to license your patent invention to him. You big dummy corporations. And it just takes the mutual consent of the supplier and the subcontractor, or by direction of the contracting officer. So if they mutually consent behind your back and you don't give them a direction otherwise, that's a mutual consent and you're going to get fucked. You better know how to place your contract terms and conditions in there. Customer agrees to make third-party payment so long as it's considered, or so long as it's, so long as it's considered that credit is given to the customer's account. That's giving proper consideration in the offer and acceptance. I, as third party, like I said, I'm the third party. I'll make the third party payment as the customer. Customer agrees to make third party payment so long as it's considered that customer or credit is given to the customer's account. And I've got that in one of their contracts that they gave me from the hospital emergency room, and it says sales contract on the top. Not a service contract, a sales contract. Be furnished to the supplier for transmission to the contracting officer. So it goes from the supplier to the subcontractor, then to the contractor. So unless the contractor steps up and says, no, he's contracting under me. And this is why I said when I was doing sales and advertising as an independent contractor and didn't pay taxes, all the people that worked under me, they didn't pay taxes either, because as as an independent contractor, they were contracting with me, and I didn't have anybody above me that they were going to go around or could go around. That way the IRS, as a private entity, couldn't step in and say, you owe us. No, you got to go through me first. And unless you do that, that's what they're going to do. They're going to go around you. You got to have the intellect to learn how to read this stuff and take the time to do it. And again, it keeps saying contracting officer. So again, you've got to be a resident to make sure that you're not trading with an enemy. and that resident is supposedly a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. And you just volunteered, so it's not in fact set in stone as true, factual, and actual. There's an error in the record, and the record must reflect accurately. So let's go down to, let's do reading, withholding payment. Withholding payment. Final payment under this contract will not be made until the supplier delivers to the contracting officer the reports required by paragraph C above. So what we have here is we have a supplier and a contracting officer, and they're treating everybody as a subcontractor. And as a subcontractor, we're not reaching out to the supplier or the post office. Like I said, we're not supposed to be dealing with these administrative courts. We're supposed to be dealing with the post office and the United States Postal Service. And this is the federal government, means all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service, which is a registered agent, and the Postal Regulatory Commission, again, the commission of the post office, who is the trademark holder. Okay, Office of Inspector General. Inspect the record, find that the errors that I'm stating are true, and means that they need to be removed. Why? Because I have a patent right to have the information reflect accurately, and that person, that's not me. That number, that's not me. Everybody in this world has been posing it as me, and I can prove it's not. It's applicable, and I say again, applicable to the Department of Defense, 5 USC 301, departmental regulations, wherein it talks about both the minimum birth registration requirements and the Plain Writing Act. Folks, what you're looking at is plain writing. It's applicable to the Department of Defense as it relates to enumeration at birth. One of the minimum birth registration requirements has to be enumerated. Contracts and contracting officer may withhold from payment such sum as considered appropriate, not exceeding $50,000 or 10% of the amount of this contract, whichever is less, to be held as a reserve until the supplier delivers all the reports, disclosures, and information specified in paragraph C above. Subject, invention, disclosure, and reports. Again, it's got to be subject. So you first have to make it subject as an invention by applying for a patent license so that it can then be disclosed to the world through them. You can do all of it yourself. If action is deemed warranted because of the supplier's performance under Clause 8.1 patent rights of this contract or other postal service contracts, the contracting officer may withhold from such payment sum as considered appropriate, not exceeding $50,000 or 10%. What's 10%, folks? Is that the tithe? Is that the tax? Is that the gift up front? Is this the Postal Service? Remember, I told you 26 USC 6201 clearly states, and it says that the Secretary of Treasury must deem this, that taxes are duly paid by stamp. I wonder if the Secretary of Treasury knows that none of those records that have stamps on them are valid then, and yet they're claiming that taxes have been paid. How is that if there's no stamps on them? Everybody's insisting that they're paying taxes, and yet they're paying with Federal Reserve notes, stamps, or excuse me, Federal Reserve notes, checks, money orders, all kinds of things. Anything but a stamp. You big dummy corporations. Suppliers request for greater rights. How can they get requests or requests for greater rights? Where can they get greater rights? The supplier at the time of first disclosing a subject invention pursuant to paragraph C1A above, but not later than 3 months thereafter, may submit in writing to the contracting officer a request for rights by license or otherwise in any invention. It's a request to the one inventing it. All of a sudden got a thing popped up on my screen and it won't go down. There we go. Okay, so where we're at. Oh, request. For rights by license or otherwise in any invention. And it's got to be in writing to the contracting officer. So again, you got to be a resident so you can be said contracting officer. That means you need to be deemed necessary by the board for as a commercial entity. You must be organized under the laws of the United States pursuant to an agreement to the with the Federal Reserve under 12 USC 614. A lot of things that need to be required in that contract with the United States as a corporate entity that aren't fulfilled. They're not fulfilled. And if they're not fulfilled, then you're not subject to being required to apply for a patent license if you invent something. You got to quit doing that. Reservation of rights to the Postal Service tells you about their stuff to manufacture and make supplies, and that's the Postal Service. Those are the rights that were granted by the Post Office. So the Postal Service, even though the Post Office is the one that holds the trademark for the copyright information, it's the Postal Service that does the creation for that stuff. So let's go down. We've got authorization and consent, notice of assistance regarding patent and copyright infringement, patent indemnity, waiver of indemnity, rights and technical data. I keep talking about 19 CFR 149.3, where it talks about data elements where you can give a number in lieu of a name and address. You can get that number from the Postal Service through a registered mail label. You can develop your trust and place that trust in their hands through certain data elements that are enumerated. So you can give a description of that property that's being protected without naming it and giving an address. That VIN number becomes a private identification number. That motor vehicle gets deregistered as a fleet vehicle. It's now for private use for an ambassador of God doing diplomatic service. Data record information regardless of the form or medium on which it may be recorded. Statement of live birth under that spell of illness at the hospital. The term includes technical data and computer software. The term does not include information incidental to the contract administration, such as financial, administrative cost or pricing, or management information. But what it does include is the address and the name. Information incidental to contract administration. Incidental to trust is different. So what they're doing is they're grabbing in that trust that's already there. And again, like I said earlier, that disposition. They get to rename the beneficiary. And then that's a disposition of yourself. Form, fit, and function data. Again, you've got to be fit for service. You've got to be competent for service. And this is why when in those administrative courts, they can easily find you incompetent because you don't know if you're fit for service or not. If you knew you were not fit for service, you would know that you're not fit for those administrative courts under that service. Get it? Data relating to an item or process that are sufficient to enable physical and functional interchangeability. So physically, as a man, I do not have an identification of person. I don't have a name. You cannot find one on me. And functional interchangeability, as well as data identifying source. So you can't find any data identifying me as the spiritual living soul. That white stone cast with my name given by him, you ain't got access to it. Size, configuration, mating and attachment characteristics, functional characteristics, and performance requirements, except that for computer software. It means data identifying origin. It's that private data identifying where you came from, mom and dad. And you identified him as a person. You gave him a name, but you didn't understand the function of given name and family name. So you gave it away freely without a care in the world. And the Social Security Administration and the Department of Defense, through enumeration at birth, translated the given name and a family name to a legal name so they could make the presentment of a presumption known as a legal fiction to the courts. And nobody's rebutted it properly. Functional characteristics and performance requirements. Perform. The action of the form in person. Requirements. It can't be required until it applies to you or you applied it to yourself, but specifically excludes the source code. Specifically excludes the living soul, the spirit. You're going by the manual instead of the spiritual. Because the ego of the man says you got to save this body. You got to pump this body up. You got to make it look good. It's a popularity contest. Good job, folks. You big dummy corporations. Algorithm, process, formulas, baby formula, and machine level flow charts of the computer software. Limited rights data, data other than computer software developed at private expense. All of your thoughts. All the time you spend thinking, no matter what it's spent thinking about, including minor modifications of these data. Technical data, data other than computer software or of a scientific or technical nature. So when you're specifically thinking about drawing and drafting and building things, or drawing art, all kinds of things, drawing nature, like they did when they did their medical experiments and skinned people to see what their muscles looked like. Yeah. Kind of artistic, isn't it? That's what they're protecting there. Unlimited rights, the rights of the Postal Service in technical data and computer software to use, disclose, reproduce, prepare derivative works, telling you not original works, but derivative works, distribute copies to the public, and perform and display publicly, not privately, in any manner and for any purpose, and to have or permit others to do so. Sounds kind of unlimited, doesn't it? Except as provided in paragraph C below regarding copyright, the Postal Service has unlimited rights in technical data first produced in the performance of this contract. Why? Because again, the post office is the trademark holder, and therefore they're the ones that have superior rights to that copyright. Except as provided in paragraph C below regarding copyright, the Postal Service has unlimited rights that were extended by the post office, the trademark holder of the copyright. That's what they were granted. Unlimited rights in the works of the post office. Except the extent that they consult or constitute minor modifications of data that are limited rights data. So they have, or that they constitute. Remember constitution? What constitutes them? Remember I mentioned that earlier. It constitutes minor modifications. So the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union is a modification, minor modification of something else, known as the Law of Nations, otherwise known as Principles of Nature, which is supported firmly by the scriptures around the world. And there's a minor modification in that data. So a quick break and reminder to everybody to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Hit that PayPal button and share some love. Every little bit counts, 10, 15, 20 bucks. I want to say thanks to Eric Lieberman, Rights Camera Action, La India Maria, Freedom Grower. Thanks for showing up, folks. Who else? Harry Nutt, good to see you again. Aaron, greetings. Jeff Pizer, Citizen Science Oral Health, JLV. Anybody else I do not see on the board here, welcome. Appreciate your support. If you're subscribed on El Perro but not Hecklebus, go over there and subscribe. And likewise, if you're subscribed on Hecklebus but not El Perro, go over there and subscribe. Anybody else that wants to come up, that StreamYard link is coming down again real quick. I know there's some people in chat, so we're going to drop that. So it refreshes that link for anybody that wants to come up. And again, folks, when we take a look at this, we've really got to come out of our childlike mind and behavior. And like I said, I hope everybody takes it into context to unlearn everything you've learned and relearn it. Concise English Handbook, College Composition Handbook, and a King James Version Bible, 1611 edition. And that's only because that's what's stated as the law of the land here for the Americas. Okay, form, fit, and function data delivered. Remember, we talk about a livery coming from the private side, the natural side, which is a livery stall. Animal, which includes man, are generally as an agricultural thing, are born in stalls. Install. That's an install payment agreement. You catching on? I hope so. Under this contract, accept all form, fit, and function data describing limited rights data must be delivered with unlimited rights. Limited rights data must be delivered with unlimited rights. Okay. 1 USC 1, words denoting gender, numbers, gender, and so forth. When you look at that, it shows you the contradiction of their laws in the duality, and this is what we're talking about. This contract term is talking about limited rights delivered with unlimited rights. And what it's actually telling you there is it's full rights according to the limitations expressed. So under those rights, the guy receiving the rights, delivered with unlimited rights, has the right of invention of creating new rights that he can then convey back to the supplier of the original rights invested and say, hey, what about these rights? And come to an agreement, a mutual consent to include additional rights. This is your ability, your unlimited power to contract, to bring the piece to the table, to bring the message instead of the communication. Communication is about a debt. A message is what you can bring to the table as an offer, putting forth that 10% first, letting them know that you know what you're speaking about by doing your research and presenting the definitions. That's your 10%, defining. Then you have the body, which is the context of 80% of the language and the terms and conditions, and then you have your 10%, which is that mutual consent coming to conclusion, the finalization of that contract. 10-80-10. Technical data delivered under this contract that constitutes, there's that constitution again, what constitutes you? Manuals in man. What constitutes the man? Well, when we talk about what constitutes the man, it's the paperwork that constitutes the person of the man, and it's the spirit that constitutes the man. So you should be going by your constitutional, the spiritual constitution. But people leave that constitution and believe so much in the manuals that define the man and describe the man and all that glory that the man gets in person. Technical data delivered under this contract that constitute manuals or instructional and training material for installation, operation, or there's that installation, delivered and then installed. You were delivered from your livery stall and put in another stall. Moved from one place to another, disposition, displaced, or routine maintenance. You became a main tenant and repaired of items, components, or processes delivered or furnished for use under this contract. So all of those contracts under administration, all the contracts under the executive office, the legislative office, and the judicial office, those are all subcontracts under this contract, according to the United Nations and the 194 nations that joined that Universal Postal Union and their labor union contract, the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union. That's what constitutes them. And it's all the subcontracts under there, contracts and subcontracts under that are all delivering, you're all delivering technical data that you shouldn't be doing. Personal data, private data, you should shut your fucking mouth until you learn this stuff and you can put pen to paper and coin your words or purse your lips. Other technical data delivered under this contract unless provided otherwise in paragraph G below. The allocation of rights in any computer programs, databases, and documentation will be determined by Clause 8-9, rights in computer software, which are patent when you create your own site from a private extension, private domain. The computer software automatically has a routing saying that you have Clause 8-9 computer software rights. You have just as much rights to those on the private side as they do have on the public side. Quality of law among the states, the public states and the private states of being. Except that limited rights formatted as computer databases. So I can't take like what they call a tip list. In other words, I can't take somebody else's database of customers and then start contacting those customers as my own. That's what these debt collectors are doing. It's called a tap list. tap list. It's where they tap your ass because you're already on the list. It's an enlistment. For delivery to the Postal Service are to be treated as limited rights data under Clause 8.6, rights in technical data. You guys catching on to this stuff? Greetings, Dick. Greetings.
Yeah, so they're saying they have unlimited rights, but then they go on to say we have limited rights with regards to using other source data from, I guess, another corporation or somebody else's mailing list.
Yeah. So when you invent something, okay, and you fill out a patent, apply for a patent, you're filling out an application, and you're filling out that application with a contracting officer or a subcontract officer, and that automatically implies that you're providing a contract with the Postal Service, particular if you're using that address, which is an implied contract itself. So now you're considered a subcontractor, and you can communicate directly with that supplier, the post office. And again, that's what I'm urging everybody they should be doing, because those contracts in between are violating and saying that you're part of the public contracting system, and you're not. You're a private entity and you have the rights to subcontract, but you have the right of privity to keep that private information private. They can't say, well, you're contracting with us in this application. No. I'm not part of that, but I can adopt that same ability. I can adopt the same ability to act in the same way in the private capacity. In other words, I can enter into a contract for public services to come pick up my garbage, but I don't have to disclose my private information. I can use a widely recognized, commercially available number in lieu of the name and address. And that number has been provided to me through a supplier. Okay, and I have the right to use it. Period. That's all I'm doing. I'm just using it according to its use. And that's what you said right there. I can use it. You're using it the wrong way. You told me to use the Social Security number, and that's placing a liability on the public record. I have found through my research and the Postal Services, and they accept it by using the number on the back of that Social Security number, Social Security card, converted and using it as the prepaid number. The Postal Service lets my shit go through. That's the judicial record. That's the judicial fund. It's a mutual fund, and there's mutual consent. That mutual consent is with the Treasury Direct account. That's where you authenticate that birth certificate. That was the enumeration at birth. The number on the front applies to the birth certificate. You take that title, you wrap all the state titles up that you created throughout your lifetime, you hand them all back to the state with a directive with that birth certificate verifying your statement of intent. I never intended to place liability on the public record. All of these show that they were public liabilities. I need them to be redacted and have the record corrected, because I was never of the capacity to do so. I was given use to do it, and nobody taught me to use the right number the right way. Not my fault. I do repent, but they were accidents. Continuous and repeated exposure to the same events that caused a liability placed on the public where the insured never expected nor intended. And that's one of their definitions. Again, 49 CFR 313 or something like that, definitions of accident. Continuous and repeated exposure to the same events that caused a liability to be placed on the public record. Does that sound like the accident you think it was? When you think about accident, oh, he had an accident. He slipped and fell.
Right.
By this definition, it's a continuous and repeated exposure to the same events over and over again. That implies plural. It's not just an accident, it's accidents. 1 USC 1. The plural imports the singular imports the plural. They're wrapped up in their own shit. And I've caught them in almost every corner you can just by learning all those terms and how they apply. That's transportation code. In the transportation code, there's another clause in there that says, in the transportation code, the definition of commerce. Commerce means traffic, transportation, or trade. So the transportation code means commerce code. Oops. Commerce, accident, means continuous and repeated exposure to the same commercial conditions time and again, placing a commercial liability on the public record. How am I able to place a commercial liability on that record if I'm truly not of a commercial capacity, which is a resident? It's all in there. And they have to qualify every last one of them. They have to qualify the address. They have to qualify the street name, which is a municipal naming. So that name belongs to the municipality, and the Postal Service is a holding agent with a bonding number through the post office because it's proprietary information through the municipal contractor and the post office, the supplier. It's amazing stuff. So we're going to go on and finish up with this copyright part.
When they were talking about the form fit and function data, and you said the source code, because that's excluded.
Right.
They probably meant like the original from a
birth enumeration at birth. That would be the source code.
Do you think that that's the interpretation of the people that wrote this, or are you?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they know exactly what they're talking about. The source code is always going to be that statement of live birth at the hospital. In every case, that's the creation of a person.
Yeah, and it excludes that.
Yep. It excludes the origin source. It excludes the memorial and creates a.
See, I thought you were taking it back to the spirit, that the actual source is the formless, the spirit. You know, it's not a document of.
Yeah, and that's what mom and dad are supposed to do. See, at customs, they ask you, do you have anything to declare? You know what you're doing at that hospital? You just made a delivery. And it's very important. Isn't it? Did you forget the importance and not make the proper memorial and herald out the cry of a legacy heir? And his name shall be? See, that's the part that wasn't made. Instead, they gave him a birth certificate instead of a memorialization. They give you a birth certificate and then memorialize you at death. Here in the spiritual world, you're supposed to present that memorialization as an angel born under the earth. An angel descended under the earth to come forth to help mankind come out of the Babel and ascend. And you have a rightful and proper set of mom and dad to teach you that knowledge so that you aren't destroyed. But yay, mom and dad are stupid, and so you are destroyed. Pretty sick.
Yeah, it really is.
So let's go down here to the next one. I want to make sure we have very clear unauthorized marking of data. Okay, every keystroke creates a security certificate in this electronic form. In writing, every stroke of the pen, every mark of the pen is part of the creation of the letter. Every letter is the creation of the word. Every word is the creation of the sentence. Every sentence is the creation of a paragraph. Every paragraph is the creation of a chapter. Every chapter is the creation of a book. Every book is a creation of a library. Every library is militarily defended. Every library is militarily protected because nobody spiritually protects themselves. and they let it outwardly and put it in paper. So there becomes a greater and greater need for military protection of the written documents. And this is why they have a Paperwork Reduction Act, you dumb fuckers. Learn how to coin your words or purse your lips. Learn how to speak things into existence as you need them. Not the material things, but the path, the sight to go the path you need. You don't need anything else than that. As long as you walk the path of prosperity, they will be provided along that path. The unauthorized marking of data is you putting things into existence. You're marking things on paper. You know nothing of what you're doing. Quit doing it. If any technical data delivered under this contract are marked with the notice specified in paragraph G below, and the use of such a notice is not authorized by this clause, origin source. They can't accept an origin source. So if you're trying to get them to accept your origin source, I'm telling you, you cannot be in their system. That's why it's a correction, and it needs to be removed, and they have to recognize your origin source outside of those jurisdictions. And the only way you can do that is equity. Only way. You have to bring them into their spiritual essence and bring the message to them clearly to let them know you are standing on the equal ground under your creator. This is not about contracting. This is about what you believe yourself inherently as a living soul in the form of a man. Or if the data bear, your mother bare labor pains. She bare forth an image and likeness. This is the creation of born, not birthed. Any other unauthorized restrictive markings. Again, that goes to that limited rights, unlimited. You can't restrict you can't place restrictions. They're saying they're unrestricted. Below, and use of such notice is not authorized by this clause, or if the data bear any other unauthorized restrictive markings. They're saying they're unrestricted, or if the data bear any other unrestricted restrictive markings, any unauthorized authorized markings. It's all babble. The contracting officer may at any time either return the data or cancel the markings. Do you have the right to cancel your signature? That is your mark. They require that you use a signature as your mark. Cancel the markings. Hold them to their contract. This is the judicial side, not the administrative side. The contracting officer must afford. Oh, this could get expensive. It could get costly. You comprehend me? Like I said earlier in that bench warrant one, it could get expensive. Don't put a $350 bond out there, you cheap motherfuckers. I want $3.5 fucking million. The supplier at least 30 days to provide a written justification to substantiate the propriety of the markings. So again, like in the bench warrant, I showed you they did a hearing or something, did a filing on the 6th of January of 2022, and I responded, not within a 30 days, but it's informal. It was an informal response. See, they want a formal response. A formal response is within 30 days. I gave them an informal response in a special message. May result in the cancellation of the markings. Let's see. Failure of the supplier to timely respond or to provide written justification. So when I did tell them and they didn't respond as a supplier of the bench warrant or the other contracts or subcontracts, failure of the supplier to timely respond or to provide written justification may result in the cancellation of the markings. May. It most certainly does. Contracting officers see contracts on those kinds of considerations must be renewed every 30 days. Once the contract is made and termed, and that term is for 1 year, then it's renewed every year. But like your leases, that's every 30 days. The contracting officer must consider any written justification by the supplier and notify the supplier if the markings are determined to be authorized. So it again is saying the contracting officer is the one that is making the discretion. Okay, so you're the one that's making that discretion and applying it to yourself. Quit doing that. Quit telling them, yeah, it's authorized. Yeah, I authorized it. You signed on that check and authorized it, you dummy. Rescind it. Cancel it. I wasn't supposed to authorize that. My accident. The foregoing procedures may be modified in accordance with the Postal Service regulations implementing the Freedom of Information Act 5 U.S.C. 552. Freedom of Information Act applies to 5 U.S.C. 552. That's employees. I'm not an employee, and you're exposing information that you're not supposed to be exposing. You're disclosing information that's not supposed to be disclosed. You're holding information you're not supposed to be holding. My apologies. I didn't mean to give it to you. Had I known this, I wouldn't have. If necessary, to respond to a request thereunder. If necessary. Again, there's that damn term that says it needs to be necessary. It needs to be of necessity. If it wasn't deemed necessary to begin with, you're just volunteering. Get it? In addition, the supplier is not precluded from bringing a claim in connection with any dispute that may arise as the result of a final disposition of the matter by a court of competent jurisdiction. So a court of competent jurisdiction in a judicial discernment is not an administrative court, yet that's what they're doing. They're making judicial determinations in an administrative court when the judicial determination has never been made yet. It's only been volunteered. And they're making that judicial determination, and they're determining that you are a necessary party in their court actions because they need a party to be a surety. And so here's a document. We need you to sign this. If you don't, we're going to hold you in jail until you do. That's extortion. That's treason. That's kidnapping. That's misprision of felony because they should know, and yet they're not reporting it. Because, of course, they're not going to tell on themselves, hey, we're going to investigate ourselves, and yeah, we find ourselves innocent. We didn't do anything wrong. That's why it's so important for you guys to learn this stuff so you can start stepping up and pointing it out to them. You're not going to get me on no fucking bench warrant contempt for failure to appear. I dare you. Show me that court was a court of competent jurisdiction, being an administrative court, and I'm not under your administration. Show me that. Omitted or incorrect markings. This is why I say it's so important to correct the record, because those are incorrect markings. Again, you're not subject to the administration. You marked on their documents, and you need to have that shit removed. Technical data delivered to the Postal Service without limited rights notice authorized by paragraph G below or the copyright notice required by paragraph C above will be deemed to have been furnished with unlimited rights. So if you don't give them a limited rights notice telling them that their rights are limited, they're going to have it's will be deemed to have been furnished with unlimited rights. All them checks, you don't limit their rights. That's a blank endorsement. You didn't limit their rights. And the Postal Service assumes no liability for the disclosure outside the Postal Service. Why? Because you're the one disclosing it outside the Postal Service, you big dummy corporations. The supplier may request within 6 months or a longer time, approved by the contracting officer, yourself. If you're going to get into a communication or messaging back and forth with them, you're the one that's going to be doing the approving. Even though you're not contracting, you're in the position in those talks with the supplier. And the supplier may request from you within 6 months, after delivery of the data, permission to have notices placed on qualifying technical data at the supplier's expense. So after you deliver the data, the supplier may request within 6 months after the delivery of that data, permission to have notices placed on qualifying technical data at supplier's expense. Remember, I told you about the title being transferred, expenses incidental to title, transfer of title to the agency. The agency is the supplier. What do you mean the agency is the supplier? Department of Transportation, Department of Motor Vehicle under the state of Iowa is the one that supplied that driver's license, not me. Are you catching on? And the contracting officer may agree to do so if the supplier indemnifies the technical data to which the omitted notice is supplied, demonstrates that the omission of the notice was inadvertent, establishes that the use of the proposed notice is authorized. Who authorized it? Me. How did I authorize it? I authored it. I wrote it. I didn't have somebody else do it for me. I did it. I'm telling you, you can't have somebody else do it for you. You big dummy corporations, quit being so fucking lazy. Acknowledges that the Postal Service has no liability with respect to the disclosure, use, or reproduction of any such data made before addition of the notice or resulting from the omission of the notice. 5 CFR 575.102. Federal government, who's using all that data elements that you gave to, means all entities of the government of the United States, the corporate entity. So all those corporate transactions you've been making, all the bank accounts, all the student report cards, those are all instrumentalities that you can gather up in the name of that title and send back to the agency, every last one of them, and expenses incidental to transfer of title to the agency. They can gather them all up for correction, declassification under declassification form SF or DS 715, declassification. And that declassification is going to go through the process of expenses incidental to transfer of title to the United States, because it's the United States corporate entity that has to clear up all the records, settle all the accounts, and transfer all the remainders, which are to be converted into credits and deposited in the new account, which is a merger of the old administrative account with a new private trust. My apologies. I repent. Again, it was just due to repeated, continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions over and over, wherein a public liability was placed on the record that I didn't realize was happening. Now that I do, I give you my notice. It wasn't authorized at that time. I need to rescind all those signatures. I didn't know what I was authorizing. I do have that power, and I'm now authorizing the declassification. It's a matter of correction of the omissions. The omission that I didn't qualify those endorsements and limit your use. Protection of limited rights data, that G part. When technical data other than data listed in B1A, B, and C above are specified species. There's that man in the spirit. Species. Specified. You have to make it special. To be delivered under this contract and qualify as limited rights data if the supplier desires to continue protection of such data. The supplier must affix the following limited rights notice. The supplier must affix the following, not me, the supplier. Notice to the data, and the Postal Service will thereafter treat the data subject to paragraphs E and F above in accordance with the notice. Limited rights notice. These technical data are submitted with limited rights under Postal Service contract number, registered mail receipt. You send that motherfucking document to yourself. You leave it in that envelope. That birth certificate, that's the contract. The state is the subcontractor. They're the ones using those data elements, not you. And you're putting limited use on those data elements. And you let the post office know in a notice that that's what you have in that envelope and that you hold it in your possession. And they were the trustee in passing it from you to your estate trust. Okay? These data may be reproduced, and you do that by 2 birth certificates. You mail one to yourself with the directive to the Postal Service to hold it as a limited rights notice. That's the limited rights notice. So you have one mailed to yourself, and you duplicate it and send it to the post office. That's their directive. Let them know. And again, I've got the electronic payment systems account set up as a trust account, the Keith Orland Little FBU trust account. And that's what in my directive to them, that's where I'll direct it. That's the trust account that it associates with, that it's relative to. Okay. These data may be reproduced and used by the Postal Service with the express limitation that they will not, without written permission of the supplier, be used for purposes of manufacture or disclosed outside the Postal Service. Do not detain. Hey, that police officer that's outside the Postal Service and is operating commercially, independently on the Postal Service road under Article 1, Section 3, Clause 4, Postal Roads, and Article 1, Section 3, Clause 17, Needful Places and Buildings, by using that address on his citation, he's in a little bit of trouble. Know what I mean? Don't use that postal contract wrong. I'll show you how you use that postal contract wrong. You're not supposed to defame their name and number. Dummy. You big dummy corporation. For the following purposes, provided that the Postal Service makes such disclosure, subject to prohibition against further use and disclosure. Use by support service suppliers, the administrative courts. So the administrative courts have to get their permission. That administrative law judge has to get his permission from the Postal Service. Evaluation by Postal Service evaluators. Use, except for manufacture, by other suppliers participating in the Postal Service program, of which the specific contract is a part, for information and use in connection with the network, with work performed under each contract. And again, when we talk about work performed under each contract, we're talking about the Social Security Administration for unemployment compensation and retirement after you are done working. And that's the number they tell you to supply to everybody else, wherein it actually puts a liability on the public record because them on the backside are converting that to the obligor number and placing that public liability on that record instead of telling you and educating you that the number on the back of that social security card is the proper prepaid number if you convert it correctly. Learn this stuff and learn how to use it, and you'll be able to do the same things I do. And you wonder why I don't show you proof. It's private shit. I showed you the fucking stamp. I make things as public as I can. But you have to qualify your own privacy. And yet here you are screaming for me to help you with your privacy stuff, and you want to make it all public, you dumbasses. It's called limited rights, you big dummy corporations. This notice must be marked on any reproduction of these data in whole or in part. So all you got to do is make a notice of limited use rights, and it's got to be there. That's why I use that copyright notice and disclaimer of the Universal Postal Union on my site.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So when you pay taxes without a stamp, is that fraud, or is it going to somewhere different than it would had you used a stamp?
Well, most certainly. Who do you owe taxes to if you're paying taxes duly paid by stamp?
You owe taxes to if you paid taxes duly. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Like, I don't know. Like,
if you pay taxes by
is
stamp,
it a bait and switch or something? It's like they're telling you you're paying taxes, but
the second layer of that, Dick, is if you pay taxes by stamp, how do you use a stamp? You just show it to them?
You could purchase a stamp from the post office, right? And you could use their stamp by paying them
how do you use
money for that service.
Do you buy a $1 stamp from the post office and then go to the bank and give them that stamp and convert it back to that $1 bill? That's not how you use a postal stamp, is it? Right. How do you use a postal stamp?
You affix it to whatever you're going to.
There you go. Affixed.
Yeah.
So when you pay taxes, what are you doing? You're affixing something to a legal document that shows that property was transferred. If you're paying taxes with Federal Reserve notes, you've been duped into believing that you bought that property, but it was never transferred. And they know it, and they keep accepting those Federal Reserve notes, and you keep.
Oh, I get what you're saying. This because the corporation still owns it, and you're not even in ownership of that thing you're paying taxes on. So you're not even paying taxes on it because you don't even own it. You're just giving them your blood, sweat, and tears for something that's not even yours. You registered the car; it's owned by the state. You're, you did a deed
with certificate of title. They talk about that MCO. I don't care if you outright pay for it. You can get your cash back too if you do it right. Like I said, customer agrees to make third-party payment so long as it's understood that the customer or the credit is given to the customer's account. It's a very simple contract clause, and I've got, matter of fact, I'll pull it out and I'll show you, folks. I get it here. This is all my hospital papers from my cancer, right? And so I've got, let me find it here. Now, this is what happened when I went to the hospital, to the emergency room, when I had a pain in my shoulder. I didn't know it was cancer at the time. I had just gotten a job painting for a friend, and I thought it was from painting. You know, I've been spending all day like Tom Sawyer painting them fucking fences all day long, fucking week after week after week. And I thought my arm or my shoulder just gave out. You know, it's some kind of burr or nerve damage, right? So I went to the hospital. I was in severe pain. It just wouldn't let me sleep. And they gave me this.
Wow, a sales agreement.
Yeah. That's the emergency room at the hospital, guys. Okay. Now on the back, as part of the sales agreement, the customer agrees to pay the stated price for the equipment, it being understood that credit will be given to the customer's account for payments received from any medical insurance program or from any third party. I am that third party. I am the one making that payment. And under that contract clause, it provides for the proper circulation. What goes out must come back, right, guys? So under that and that's on their document. They provided that.
That's wild.
Let me see.
It's rental equipment on there too.
Customer agrees to pay the stated price for the equipment, it being understood that credit will be given to the customer's account for payment. All you got to do is learn the contract terms and conditions, learn how to use them. All you're doing is reiterating what they're putting out. Use it against them. Just like I said with the scripture, just like I said with the codes. Their contracts, you use them against them. It'll show you that you're not part of that contract. You're the third party. Who funds the hospital? The United States in all cases. So the United States is the unknown real party of interest. I am the third party or acting as principal because I'm the one that's actually giving those funds. I'm the subcontractor with the principal, the supplier of the funds, just like the post office, right? So as the subcontractor, I make agreement with the United States in their interest, naming all the finances in their interest, and I'm the principal. And it's understood that as long as I'm the third party, I make a payment, credit's extended to me.
So it comes back to you in what form?
Credit.
Is it a credit?
It doesn't matter what form I give it to them. I can give it to them in credit. I can use a credit card, give them credit, and they'll, okay. And I have to mention to them under this contract clause here, you've already agreed, and I signed to that agreement. When I give you this, you're supposed to turn around and extend that credit back to me. You understand me?
But it's in the form of medical services, right? Isn't that what they'll perform? Yep. Okay.
So when they send me a bill, and remember, it's any other third party. So when they give me prescription after prescription after prescription, and they're using that firm name, this was a subcontractor from the original contract at the hospital, that sales agreement. This was an extension. Yep. Third party payment. You want me to pay these? Same condition. Same condition. That's why I show everybody them receipts. Them receipts that I save up. Those all say US debit. So if credit is extended to me and it's in the interest of the United States, then shouldn't that interest be extended to the United States as well? Debit. U.S. debit.
Yeah, that's not a payment, right?
That's a debit and credit exchange. Same thing. And I got all kinds of them. They all say the exact same thing. They're going to come out U.S. debit. Take your PayPal card if you got a PayPal or Cash App. Go down to a local ATM. At that local ATM, use that card. And mine is particular because I don't have a bank account attached to it. I didn't when I was doing this, and I do now, but it'll still do the same thing. But at the time I was doing this, I would use an ATM to draw cash out, and I would do it from checking. Now, if I ain't even got a bank account, how does it say that I've got a checking account? Okay. Remember, folks, checking is secured. That's guaranteed, right? So how do you guarantee a debit? By fulfilling the circulation, by extending the credit. They issued the debit. I issue the credit. Now it balances. I issue the credit in the interest of the United States. So it clears the debit.
How do you issue the credit? I feel so fucking dumb right now, but I'm trying to follow this.
Okay, say I've got $2,000 on my credit card. Okay.
Right. Yep.
And the bank says I owe them $1,493.87.
Yep.
According to that contract, I can take that credit card that's got $2,000 on it, take it to the hospital, have them take that $1,493.87 off of it. And under that contract clause, they've got 3 days to reconcile any out of balance account. Now, if I don't have my money returned to that account according to that contract clause in 3 days, I can file a claim against them through the Postal Service. They're the ones that put that contract clause on that contract saying that the customer agrees to make that payment so long as it's understood that the credit is given to the customer's account. Here, I made the payment as the customer. You agreed I was a customer on that sales agreement. That's my signature. Here's my payment. Now, where's my credits? That says you're supposed to give me credits. I gave you credits. Now, where's my credits? Very simple. Yes, credit for payments is received when you make payments. Under 12 USC 813 and 12 CFR 204.2, they're both sets of definitions, and they define deposit. And this says that upon the deposit into the financial institution, they're obligated to give credit if they haven't already given credit. They're obligated to give credit if they haven't already given credit for that deposit. The difference is you have to make it a special deposit. So when I go to that hospital, I make it a special deposit, reiterating the contract clause as a directive so that they understand that I know exactly what I'm doing. It's in their contract that they offered me. I accepted, I signed it, and that contract clause says it comes back to me. If I'm going to pay you, you have to give it back to me. That's what that says. Plain and simple.
And then
have I actually done
do
this
they give it?
successfully?
Oh, go ahead.
Have I actually done this successfully, the tribe asks? Not for myself yet. That's why I'm still saving the receipts. That's why I'm doing the correction of the record and everything, so that when it's done and final, you'll see that it all comes back. All the taxes I paid, all the child support that I did pay before I finally beat them, all of that's going to come back. That's a reconciliation of the record of the funds that were created as a debit against the United States. And what I'm doing is I'm offering up those credits to relieve that, and that should come back as a principal. That's the remainder. See, when you get a job and you work for those quarters, every quarter they through those Social Security payments and the FICA payments, they put into your Social Security account what's known as insurance credits. See, they already convert everything to credits when they convert that paperwork to electronic form. That's the credit. So you can create credit in electronic form before you even create a bank account or a credit card or any kind of documentation. You can create the credit in electronic form. I think that's pretty wise. It's called blockchaining. You better learn it. So anyway, real quick reminder, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. The PayPal button is pinned at the top for anybody that wants to share some love. I think it's pertinent information that people should be getting out there. And so I do hope everybody's sharing the shit out of this. You should be sharing it repeatedly, time and time again. So think about this stuff. And Dick, if you got anything else to say, now's the time to say it. Otherwise, we're going to look at chat comments and see if there's anything else there.
No, I appreciate it. My signal's getting choppy, so I'm going to jump off. But thank you, Wizard. I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me up.
You bet. You bet. Thank you anytime. Yes, there's another one. Executive Order 13813, or excuse me, 818. Everybody look that up. You're going to see what these people, it is martial law. You're going to see what these people are doing. According to Article 10 of the Libra Code, martial law chiefly affects the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether by the expelled government or the invading army, for the army, its use, and its safety and the safety of its operations. So think about what you're doing in all of this stuff. All of this financial stuff is all military. Even use of it. Like I said, 12 USC 411 says Federal Reserve notes are for advances from one Federal Reserve institution to another by Federal Reserve agents, and for no other purpose are allowed. And yet here we are, everybody's still using them. That's 1933, guys. That's 90 years ago, and people are still using them because nobody knows those laws. Why? It's ridiculous. It's plain English. People are just lazy. Let's see here. No, claiming as third party, what I'm claiming is that as third party, I have to take on a duty or obligation that somebody else already has to do. And that duty or obligation is to make payment. We can't pay anything except by our own directive today. And again, negotiable instruments is the definition of legal tender now. So you learn how to negotiate. You have to become instrumental in those negotiations. That is the negotiable instrument, yourself. Learn how to coin your words or purse your lips. Herald it out. Sing, baby, sing. No tongue shall prosper against you, and rise up against every tongue that should place a judgment against you. This is the inheritance of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. Yeah, you should validate the process before promoting it. So let's validate the promotion of Federal Reserve notes. Once again, if you don't know what I'm doing and you don't have faith in it, you don't have the balls to step up and start doing it yourself and walk with me, then I think you might be a coward and you're placing comments out there that shouldn't be placed, tribe. Yes, you should validate the process of the use of the fucking Federal Reserve notes first, right? All you fucking big dummy corporations. The clear disclaimer is 12 USC 411. You're not supposed to be touching them. Proof in reality, not just in the head. Read it. It's in the Library of Congress. Everybody around this world can look that up. 12 USC 411. Read it, folks. For no other purposes are authorized. But by you having them in your possession is a felony, and then you turn around and authorize everybody to use them. Right? How's that for validation? So think about it. I know tribe means it. I know he means do it. And that's what I'm saying. I am doing it. But there comes a certain point you can't just start doing certain things and not have the process complete, because you're going to fucking end up in jail. Keep pushing it and have the impatience and go ahead and end up in jail. been doing this for 7 years. You think I don't want to have all the nice things? It'd be nice to be able to go back to that lifestyle. But like I said earlier, it means you have to give up that lifestyle and be true to yourself and nothing else. I'll not do it. Yes, results are validation. The homemade stamp, right? The results of the validation. Their bench warrant, how I dismissed it. And not only did I dismiss it, I did so by writing them and letting them know I knew the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and gave them plenty of scripture about it too. Matter of fact, I started out with scripture telling them that would be kidnapping. And very clearly expressed how their shit has no bearing of evidence of having any authority to do anything with no value. Again, in this day of trying to validate things by doing things, I'm telling you, you have to learn how to quit validating your system by quit putting that shit in their system. Don't tell me how to validate shit. I've already learned. I've learned to quit validating their shit. And that's what validates me, being able to do everything I've done in the last 7 years without anybody having to give me permission. Anyway, yeah, again, proof, the homemade stamp, all the documentation I put out, my site, the notices. Look at the notice I sent to IRS. That's public notice. And they've been noticed 3 times along with PayPal. You notice I'm the only one that has a PayPal account that was opened without a bank account. And then in order to get a PayPal card, I had to connect a bank account. So I connected a friend's bank account, used his card a couple times to get the PayPal card, and then disconnected that account. Then I had a PayPal account that wasn't attached to a bank account. And then I hit a donation button, and they were holding all my donations because it wasn't connected to a bank account. So guess what? I opened an old bank account without an identification or anything. All I did was give them a directive to open this account. Funny how that works. How come you're not doing it? Huh? How am I going to give you written proof of that? It was a directive in private to open up a fucking account. How am I supposed to prove that? Keep running your fucking mouth, tribe. Keep putting the fucking disqualified fear in people of not doing this shit. It's called research. Just because you ain't done it doesn't mean it isn't valid because I can't show it. It is shown. Come see my laptop. Shit that I'm not going to show out in public venue for your viewing only. With limited use terms. Don't ever disclose it to anybody else. Anyway, you can buy green bananas and let them sit there and ripen. It's called the doctrine of ripeness. Good way to end. Y'all need to grow up. And with that, understand I love you, and I don't give a fuck whether you love me back or not. I hope you enjoyed the information. And remember, don't take it for the messenger. Take it for the message that it is. It's plain and clear right in front of you. They put it there. If you can't read, that's on you. So again, everybody, God bless. Have a good night.